joining me today. I'm really excited to be sharing a new video for Studio Monday. This week I'm going to be featuring some Hero Arts products, and I'll show you how I created these really beautiful ornaments using the color layering cardinal set. The color layering sets from Hero Arts are really popular. They have so many different types of designs that you can use to create really beautiful realistic images. I love the beautiful color layering cardinal set. It's one of my favorites, and I think it works perfectly for creating some really beautiful winter cards and holiday cards as well. So I thought it would be fun to do something a little bit different this week, and instead of creating a card, I wanted to show you how you can use these to create beautiful ornaments that you can give as gifts, because these are very easy to create and the creative process really isn't that long. It took me very little time to make all three of these ornaments, and I think these would be perfect to create as a mass production to be able to then use as gifts to give to people on your holiday lists. So I'm starting off with 3 circles that I've die cut from some Simon Says Stamp 120-pound white cardstock. I also have the color layering cardinal set on the right hand side there. You can see that I have used it plenty of times before in the past. It's a little stained, and that's okay. That's one of the signs of a good clear stamp, because when your stamps end up staining from the inks that you use, especially dye inks, the stamps will actually stain. And again, that means that you have a good high quality stamp. Okay, so I'm mounting this image into my Misty stamping tool along the left hand side of the circle. I'm going to bring in some inks from Hero Arts, Altenew, and Simon Says Stamp. The one on the left there, Crimson, is the color we're going to use first. The Hero Arts color is going to be our second layer, and then the Simon Says Stamp Schoolhouse Red is going to be our third layer. So I'm going to start off with inking up the bird, this is the solid layer, and I'm going to ink it up with the crimson ink. I'll go ahead and press this down onto my circle. Now you can see that I did not get a very good impression there in the center area of that bird. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up once again and press it down in that center area just to make sure I get it nice and stamped solid down. I'm going to now line up a new circle over top of that circle that we already had stamped onto. And this is going to ensure that the bird is going to get stamped in the exact same spot, because I'm lining the circle up exactly over top of the circle that we've already done our stamping on. I'm going to ink the bird up again, press it down, and then I'll have a nice impression there on my second circle. And I'll repeat that for the third circle as well. Once I have the first layer stamped, I'm going to line up the second layer. Now I lined the second layer up along the right-hand side of the bird, the outline of that right-hand side. That was the area that helped me most be able to line it up. The other way you can line this image up is also by the eye. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up with the crimson ink from Hero Arts, and I'll go ahead and press this down onto my first stamped image. There you can see we've got that great, beautiful detail layer added to the bird. I'm going to remove that circle panel and come back to our next circle panel, which is layered underneath because we've been stacking them on top of each other. I'll go ahead and ink up that bird again and then stamp it down right over top of our second circle. And because we line these circles up exactly in the same spots, that's allowing us to be able to just quickly stamp and layer these images on top of each other to create these realistic birds. The process went really fast this way. Now the third layer, I found it best to line it up with the eye only. I also find that lining it up along the left-hand side helps a little bit, but really the best way to be able to line this particular layer is by the eye. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up with another red ink. This is the Schoolhouse Red color, and this is going to be the darkest. This will add the darkest detailed layers to our image. I'll go ahead and press this down onto my circle, and there you can see we've got this really beautiful bird all ready to go. Now that I'm ready to go ahead and start stamping on the other panels that we've been working on, I'm going to go ahead and line this up right over top of the stamping that we've already done. I'm making sure I get this lined up in the exact spot so that way as I go ahead and bring my Misty stamping tool back over, the bird will line up perfectly. So I'll go ahead and ink that up once again and press that down. And I'll go ahead and repeat this for the other panels as well. Okay, so now it's time to work on the final layer of this bird. This layer is the area that colors around the beak and the eye. I'm using soft navy ink. Many times, and I personally have thought this as well, thought to use a black color because an area around the cardinal has a very deep black color. However, I found that using navy was a perfect alternative to using black because it not only colors the area around the beak a very dark color that almost looks black, but it has a tint of blue in it. It also colors the eye blue. And if you look at a cardinal, the area around the cardinal's beak has some other colors in it besides black. So I thought the blue would be a perfect alternative to black because it adds a bit more of a realistic look. Next, it's time to ground this bird onto the branch, which is also included in the color layering cardinal set. I'm going to ink it up with some new inks from Altenew. Altenew has quite the line of dye inks, and they always release them in sets of 4. So here I've got 3 of the 4 colors. I didn't need the lightest color because I wanted to be able to have this branch be a slightly darker shade. So I didn't use the 4th color. Starting off with the 2nd color of ink that's in that ink collection. Now I want to add a little bit of detailing to this branch. You could leave it as is, but I thought it would be nice to have some other colors mixed into the branch along with that lightest color. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up certain areas of this tree branch, focusing a lot of it along the bottom portion of the tree branch, and I'm inking it up to create some difference in shading on the tree branch. And then I'll stamp it one more time over top of all of those little variations of color that we've added with the lightest color that we used in the beginning. I'll go ahead and repeat this then for all the other birds that we've stamped onto circle panels. Next, it's time to work on adding in some pine boughs to these branches. The pine boughs are included in the color layering cardinal set. I'm using a new ink collection that's also from Altenew. This is a very beautiful teal aqua color, and I really love it. It's got a very frosty feel to it. I thought it would work perfect for these cards. So I'm inking up the pine boughs in the lightest color first, and I'm kind of adding these around different areas of these panels. I'm being very random with the placement of the pine boughs, just kind of really trying to create some layers. For the lightest color, I'm putting down the most pine boughs because this is going to allow me to fill this in and have it look a little bit more realistic. As I fill in the branches of these pine boughs, I'm going to gradually use less and less images using the darker colors. So as I stamp some of the darker shades of ink, I'm not going to stamp as many images because that's going to allow me to get a more realistic and add more depth to these images. So it looks like some of the images are going to be further back in the design and then others are going to be up front. If you don't have very many types of ink colors and you only have like a few of each color, you could create these color layering effects by doing 2nd generation, 3rd generation stamping, basically by stamping off onto a piece of paper. So in this case, if you wanted to create the lightest color of the bird and you only have one shade of red, you could stamp the bird in that shade of red, but first stamp it off on a piece of scratch paper, then stamp the lightest color with that 2nd generation of ink. Then when you come back for the 2nd layer, then you'd want to go ahead and stamp that with the full strength of that ink color. Then for the 3rd layer, what I would do is I would stamp over top of that 3rd layer multiple times with that red ink that you'd be using for the bird, and that would create a more deeper color of red because you're layering the color on top of each other constantly, so it's really intensifying that shade. So by the time you'd finished, you'd have a bird that was shaded but using just one ink color, which is really handy for when you don't have very many ink colors. So keep that in mind. You don't need to have lots of inks to create color layering effects. Okay, so now that I've done all of my stamping, I want to go ahead and trim this circle out. Now, you're going to ask me, well, why did you cut this into a circle if you're going to go ahead and cut this out? Well, because the edges of what I'm leaving here, where the stamping kind of goes off the edges of the paper, I'm leaving that with the circle edge. And that's because as I layer this up onto my circle that I'm going to be creating for the background, it's going to create a nice even edge across the entire ornament, which will allow this to have a nice clean look. So I'm trimming around the bird, but I'm leaving the edges of the circle intact where the stamping overlaps. So that way I can have a nice finished off circle at the end when I'm ready to go ahead and put this ornament together. Here's an example of that. I've created this background using distress inks, and I'm going to be layering up the trimmed cardinal onto that paper. Now first, let me show you how I created these little background panels. I used tumbled glass distress ink and an ink blending foam, and I'm blending this onto some Strathmore Bristol Smooth paper. I'm being very careful as I apply the ink onto the paper. I'm creating a very light color, blending that lighter color down towards the left-hand side of the circle. The top right is where our background is going to be, and the white area is going to be around the bird. That's going to give the bird a little bit more of an ethereal look. It's going to make it look really, really pretty. So I'm going to add some water splatters to these circles just to give them some texture to the background. And then I'll go ahead and lift off those water droplets using a dry rag. And again, there you can see how this cardinal is going to be able to layer up onto these circles really, really beautifully. I'll go ahead and repeat the same process for the other panel that I have here cut ready for my ornaments. Once I have my ornament backgrounds ready, I'm going to take this other stamp set from Hero Arts, which is the Wintertime Fun set. I'm going to take the snowflakes and the little snow cluster images and stamp these onto the panels. This is an example of second generation stamping. I'm taking the little snow cluster stamp and I'm inking it up with the Tumble Glass Distress ink. But then I'm stamping it off onto a piece of scrap paper on the side there before I stamp it down on my project. Now, this is very, very faint. You're not going to see it very well in the video. You can see it in real life faintly because I'm using it just to create texture. I'm really not wanting it to be very prominent in the background. I want this to kind of fade off to look like snow that's way in the distance. So after I've stamped that little image across all of these panels, I'm now taking some of the snowflake images, which are also from that stamp set, and I'm inking them up with that same Tumble Glass Distress ink, and I'm going to stamp them randomly across the background of the circle. This is going to create snowflakes that are in the foreground, which will give our scene a little bit more dimension. This will help it have extra depth, which will give it a more realistic appearance. So I'll go ahead and repeat this stamping process across all the circle panels that we've created, and now it's time to start building our ornaments. So the ornaments I've built by taking first the cardinal, and I'm going to apply foam tape to the back side of the cardinal. Now, because these are ornaments and we're not going to have to worry about mailing them in an envelope because it's a card, we're able to have a little bit more fun with the dimensional process because we won't have to worry about putting extra postage on these. These are going to be given as a gift. So I'm not worrying about how much foam adhesive I'm adding to the backside of any of these ornaments that I'm building or how bulky they're going to end up being. I really like being able to kind of play around and see what kind of fun things I can create using my stamping and paper crafting products. So what I did is I stuck the cardinal along the left-hand side there of the circle to pop this up off of the background scene, which frames the cardinals beautifully. So the next step of this process is to create the frame that goes around these cardinals. The frames, I used 3 different techniques of adding shimmer to these cardstocks. I wanted to be able to show you all 3 of them, so I'm going to go ahead and walk you through very quickly the process that I took to create these. I first die cut 3 scallop circles using a Spellbinders die set. I'm inking up over top of these cardstock scallop circles using some Simon Says Stamp Clear ink. For my first glitter cardstock, I'm creating this with some Nouveau Shimmer Pearl embossing powder. Now, bear in mind, this is a pearl embossing powder, so it's not going to be a clear powder where you're going to see a true red color through it. It's going to have a more pearlescent appearance after we've applied this embossing powder and heat set it. And you'll see that as I go ahead and start heat setting this here. I'm going to start melting the powder, and then as it melts, you're going to notice that the embossing powder starts to create a pearlescent look to this cardstock. So you can see it's not a bright, true red color. It's got a little bit more of a muted look. But I think it's really beautiful, and the sparkle is just gorgeous. So here you can see how that ends up looking with our scene circle here. I love the shimmer. It adds a really nice sparkle to this ornament. For the next circle, I'm going to ink it up with that same Simon Says Stamp Clear ink. And then I'm going to take this Wow Clear Hologram Sparkle Embossing Powder. Now, as the name suggests, this one is clear. So the true red color is going to appear through this glitter embossing powder. You can see already how it has that really gorgeous purple sparkle inside of this. It has some really beautiful colors mixed into this sparkle embossing powder. Purple is the predominant color that you're going to see on this cardstock. As it melts, you can see that the paper, it becomes that same true red color that we had before we applied the embossing powder. And it has this absolutely gorgeous sparkle. Really, really beautiful. You can see as I lay this cardinal panel on top how it has that really great looking sparkle to it. And as I compare it to the pearl embossing powder, you can see it changed the tone of the paper, and the pearl embossing powder created a more muted look, while the hologram sparkle created a true clear red color. So then the final technique that I like for adding sparkle to my paper is to use some sparkle pens. So here I'm using the Zig Wink of Stella Clear Glitter Brush Pen. This glitter brush pen is perfect for adding glitter to your papers, and I really find that adding glitter to cardstock is very easy with glitter brush pens. So what I did was I just applied that over top of the cardstock only in the areas that was going to end up showing, didn't color the entire thing, and then I dried it with my heat gun just to make sure it was good and dry. And then here's a look at how all three compare together and how they each give a different result. So maybe hopefully through showing you all three techniques on how you can add glitter to your projects, this will help you in deciding what is the best way for you to be able to add glitter to your projects, or maybe show you a whole new way to add glitter to your projects to create some really beautiful effects. So next, in the process of building my ornaments, I've brought out some fun foam and also a circle die from the Simon Says Stamp Stitch Circles. This stitch circle die is the second size in the stitch circle set. This largest is the one we use to create our circle panels. So I'm die cutting that fun foam with that smaller stitch circle die, and I'm going to add double-sided adhesive to the back side of our cardinal seam panels. Once I remove the backing of the adhesive, I'm going to take the fun foam and attach it to the back side of that seam panel. Next, I'm going to take some more double-sided adhesive and add this to the back side of our fun foam. That will allow me to then be able to pop this panel up off of our scallop circles that we've created and added the glitter to. I'm going to repeat this for all of the cards until I have all of the seam pieces attached to our scallop pieces. Here's another look at the process that we've got finished so far. And then the next step is to add the hanging element, which will allow us to be able to turn these into ornaments. So what you're going to need is you're going to need another scallop circle panel. I cut it from the same red cardstock that I used for the scalloped pieces the first time. However, you could use other colors if you'd like. Next, you're also going to need some ribbon. I've cut this ribbon here, and it's about, I'd say maybe 6 to 8 inches long. And I'm going to use this to be the hanging element of our ornaments. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the length of ribbon here, and I'm kind of meeting it up there at the bottom. I'm going to add just some regular Scotch tape to the back side to hold these pieces together, and then I'm going to lay this down and layer it behind our ornament. I'm going to make sure this is centered up with our cardinal and make sure that the cardinal won't end up being lopsided, and then I'll go ahead and press this down to adhere that tape to the back side of this ornament. Now the reason we die cut again those scallop circle dies from the red cardstock is so that way we can apply this to the back side of the ornaments and hide the ribbon. If it doesn't bother you and you don't mind seeing the ribbon on the back side of your ornament, you can totally skip this step. But it bothered me on this project. I wanted to be able to hide that ribbon. So I'm going to go ahead and take this scallop panel and attach it to the back side of my ornament to hide that ribbon, and it helps enclose it inside there as well, which will also help reinforce and make sure that the ribbon doesn't end up coming out of this ornament. So I'm going to press down along the edges to make sure that the liquid adhesive bonds to the cardstocks really well, and there you can see we've got our ornament almost completely finished. I tied a bit of silver bow wire around our ribbon to create a gathered look and also finish it off and add a little bit of embellishing. I think this really finished off the ornament nicely. So I'll go ahead and trim off the excess of that little bow wire. And the bow wire, I just found at my local Michael's. It's very inexpensive. Now I'm also going to add some detailing to the bird's eye because when we stamped it, we lost the highlight of the bird's eye. There's a tiny highlight in the eye, and it's hard to capture that detail. So I went ahead and just colored over top of that with a white gel pen. For my final bit of embellishing, I'm taking some Nouveau crystal drops, and I'm going to add some snow and berries to this. Now I needed to decide what colors I wanted to use for my crystal drop selection. So I'm taking this color chart here, which I created in a previous video for Simon Says Stamp, and I'll have a link to it here in the video description and also on the Simon blog. But this color chart allows you to be able to put down a drop color of all of your crystal drop colors that you have in your collection. And then you can quickly look at this chart to decide which colors you want to use for your project. So I ended up choosing the chocolate fondue glitter drops, which is a variation to the crystal drops. And I'm using that to create the berries on my project. So I've started off by first putting down dots of color onto where I wanted the berries to be. I used a Copic marker for this, but you could use any type of pen that you want to use. The reason I did this is because these are glitter drops. So I want to make sure that you can't see through these glitter drops once they've dried and see white underneath. I want you to see brown because that's what the color I wanted for the berries. Next, I'm going to start working on creating snow in the background. And I'm first taking some white blizzard. This is another beautiful glitter drops color. And there is a difference between glitter and crystal drops. And if you're interested in learning more about that, head on over to the Simon Says Stamp blog and check out the blog post that I did about the Nuvo crystal drops and Nuvo products in general. That will explain a lot of the details about the Nuvo product line from Tonic Studios. Okay, now so after I applied some dots of the white blizzard color in the background for some snow, I'm also taking some Ranger enamel accents and adding that to the background as snowdrops as well. Now the reason I chose enamel accents instead of the Nuvo crystal drops for this white color for the snow is because that the crystal drops reactivate distress inks. I have found that to be the case every time I use the crystal drops with distress inks. They always reactivate, and so then the color of the crystal drops ends up getting tinted, so it's not the true color. And I wanted this to be a true white. I didn't want it to mix with the blue and have a little bit of a bluish tint to it. So this is why I chose the enamel accents over the Nuvo crystal drops. But after I applied those enamel accents to the background to create my snow, that was how I finished off all the other ornaments, and then that completes today's project. So I apologize for the longer video. There was a lot to cover in today's tutorial, and I wanted to make sure I covered all the bases and shared as many tips and tricks as I could in today's projects so that you can create these ornaments just as easily as I did. So if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can connect with us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as our blog. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you again very soon. Bye!